Good morning. Welcome. I am honored to be with you today as we open a very exciting kinetic sculpture exhibit at the Overland Park Arboretum and Botanical Gardens. Beginning today, the Arboretum will host an 18-month exhibit of 13 kinetic sculptures representing 10 different artists. Kinetic art is a distinct form of art that interacts with the environment to enhance the viewing experience. Every sculpture moves and changes in the light and the wind, allowing art and science to merge in a perfect setting. My name is Anna Randazzo, and it's been my pleasure to be involved with this kinetic exhibit for the past 2 years, making it happen and come to Overland Park. Today we're going to hear from local artists and experts in the field of sculpture, art, and kinetics. And we also have 7 of the 10 artists joining us on a panel to discuss their art and the vision that they have for the kinetic sculptures. Before we begin, I want to thank a few people. First, a very big thank you to Janet Long and LMC Truck for graciously sponsoring the use of this auditorium and providing the vision for coupling the kinetic exhibit with the beauty of the Nerman Museum, which is where we are today. And a very big thank you also goes out to the Symposium committee, who have spent hours and hours and hours to put this event together for us. Without their hard work and dedication, we wouldn't be here today. I also want to thank all of our guests that have traveled from far to be here, including all of the artists and Debbie. So our next speaker is Michael Wickerson. Masters of Fine Arts from the New York University in 2000, and has been employed in the sculpture department at the Kansas City Art Institute since the fall of 2001, where he served as the chair of the sculpture department from 2003 to 16. He actually began his teaching career in Newfoundland, Canada, Memorial University. In the fall of 2009, Wickerson co-founded Wickerson Studios with his wife and has directed the studio program since that time. Wickerson Studios is forever open, operating as a theater and forum for every type of visual and performing art imaginable. This 14-acre playground is served for both spontaneous and scheduled events year-round. He also continues to Good morning. Welcome. I am honored to be with you today as we open a very exciting kinetic sculpture exhibit at the Overland Park Arboretum and Botanical Gardens. Beginning today, the Arboretum will host an 18-month exhibit of 13 kinetic sculptures representing 10 different artists. Kinetic art is a distinct form of art that interacts with the environment to enhance the viewing experience. Every sculpture moves and changes in the light and the wind, allowing art and science to merge in a perfect setting. My name is Anna Randazzo, and it's been my pleasure to be involved with this kinetic exhibit for the past 2 years, making it happen and come to Overland Park. Today we're going to hear from local artists and experts in the field of sculpture, art, and kinetics. And we also have 7 of the 10 artists joining us on a panel to discuss their art and the vision that they have for the kinetic sculptures. Before we begin, I want to thank a few people. First, a very big thank you to Janet Long and LMC Truck for graciously sponsoring the use of this auditorium and providing the vision for coupling the kinetic exhibit with the beauty of the Nerman Museum, which is where we are today. And a very big thank you also goes out to the Symposium committee, who have spent hours and hours and hours to put this event together for us. Without their hard work and dedication, we wouldn't be here today. I also want to thank all of our guests that have traveled from far to be here, including all of the artists and Debbie. And frankly, I want to thank all of you for your interest in kinetic art and for coming out here on an early morning to join us on the symposium. So here's the agenda for today. As you see, we do have a scheduled break around 10 a.m. And there is water in the back of the room. You're welcome to drink it in this room. Unfortunately, you can't walk out with it. So that's the one rule we have for today. Nothing leaves this room. So here we go. It's very exciting. So our next speaker is Michael Wickerson. He received his Master's of Fine Arts from the New York University in 2000 and has been employed in the sculpture department at the Kansas City Art Institute since the fall of 2001, where he served as the chair of the sculpture department from 2003 to 2016. He actually began his teaching career in Newfoundland, Canada, Memorial University. In the fall of 2009, Wickerson co-founded Wickerson Studios with his wife and has directed the studio program since that time. Wickerson Studios is forever open, operating as a theater and forum for every type of visual and performing art imaginable. This 14-acre playground is served for both spontaneous and scheduled events year-round. He also continues to exhibit internationally as an independent and collaborative artist in Canada, the Netherlands, Poland, Spain, Bulgaria, and throughout the United States. Most recently, Michael hosted an iron casting workshop for the International Sculpture Conference that was held this past fall here in Kansas City, and the foundry at Wickerson Studio has continued to serve individual artists and satisfy commissions in the corporate and the private level. Welcome.
I welcome you again to the Hudson Auditorium, and I hope to share with you my unique perspective and attempt to cover the history of kinetic art in approximately 20 minutes. For those of you who know me, and because I have come to know myself, I have decided to stay to a script in order to make this at all possible, considering that we do have a full day of events. Where do I want to click. That's okay, I can tap. During my time at KCAI, I recall several times encouraging students to make their own artworks and develop their own art forms. Specifically, I have mentioned that the well-known artist Alexander Calder did not have an Alexander Calder to look to in order to inspire his series of mobiles, and perhaps his kinetic artworks found their inspiration from being a young spectator at a four-horse chariot race. Historically, I would like to draw from the writings of Daniel Wheeler, and specifically his text 1945 to present. In a chapter entitled Op, Kinetic, and Light Art, Wheeler finds the roots of kinetic art in many different art forms, ranging from the optical and physical dynamics of the Russian and Bauhaus constructivists, actionists, and the dematerialization of color field painting. He highlights the retinal op movements and explores the use of early motors and experiments by the early constructivists. By focusing on the kinetic art movements that came to light in the late 50s and early 60s, Williams discusses a range of kinetic works that emerged from the op art movements in an attempt to liberate the viewer from the shackles of conventional seeing, feeling, thinking, and even living, and considers the effects of kinetic arts on the future that light art posed related to energy, dynamics, and new technologies. The pop-op art movement of the 60s had won powerful gallery support and media attention with its vibrating designs. Time and Life magazines got on board with the motifs of commercialism, fashion trends, utilitarian objects, and advertising displays. The prestige of the MoMA in New York City leveraged op art groups like Zero and Grav, and Joseph Albers of the Bauhaus developed a vocabulary of op arts and early kinetic artworks that found roots in neo-impressionism, color field painting, and even the abstract impressionism of America. In time, the conceptual groundwork of op art began to differ from that of the optical painting and adapted to utilizing methods of science, technology, and industry, which I hope we talk about today. Op artists like Victor Vasarely began using space, time, motion, and light to strive for a utopian dream. This father of perceptual abstraction used transparencies, glass, and mirrors abstractly with mathematically controlled formulas and colors to generate optical sensations referred to as synetisma. Bridget Riley's works tantalized and left after images. She described her works as being in a cyclical movement of repose, disturbance and repose, until the original situation is restated. Her optical bleeds attempted to make present the non-present. All this disordered order had not only its influence upon the kinetic art movements, but its run-on, over-the-edge methods led to assemblages, environments, installations, and even happenings. At the time of Greenbergian formalism, Rauschenberg, Pollock, Alan Caprow, Cage had their influence on the foundations of the kinetic art movement. Credited with being the father of kinetic arts, Yakov Agam produced optical rhythms that set in place the founding techniques of visual kinetics. In his search for the omniscient power that has no form, no static image, Agam sought to realize the visual form that does not exist. His appreciation for the action, I try, produced artworks that appeared to disappear and retain nothing. With a great appreciation for the human experience and the sense of the spiritual, Agam conceptually developed artworks that dealt with birth, growth, flowering, and decay. Along with two other founding members of the new art group Zero, Gunter Ecker used the common carpenter's nail to balance a steely menace with beauty and silence. His gentle, swirling inflections, weightless materiality virtually captured the natural forces of fire, wind, water, and even smoke. The viewer's experiences the work and is left with a feeling of dizziness. Another new art group at the time worth mentioning was GRAV, the group for research into the visual arts. GRAV emerged in the 1960s and exploded with energy and startling chance effects. GRAV artist Francois Morellet described his works as being like a picnic, where one consumes what one takes there themselves. Up until now, with the exception of Alexander Calder, I've been discussing illusory kinetics, but things are about to change with Jesus Rafael Soto. He began using hanging straight, tightly packed rods to captivate the audience with light, space, and time. He cultivated a linear chiaroscuro image that utilized transparent plastic tubes to mimic rainforest-type environments that resolved into shimmering musical webs, full of shredded lines and chiming sounds. This shift to the actual movement of the work from the virtual kinetics of the 1950s opened the door to what can be described as kinetic sculptures. Kinetic sculpture can also trace their origins to Duchamp. 10 minutes and 10 slides into this presentation on the history of kinetic arts, and we find ourselves returning to the early 20th century, looking at the visionary Marcel Duchamp. Duchamp's roto-reliefs set the stage for kinetic artworks that had to actually move. The fourth dimension was added with the real motor, and all its parts reflected Marinetti's futuristic declaration that a roaring motor car that looks as though running on shrapnel is more beautiful than the Nike Samothrace. The Tate Modern describes constructivist Nam Gabo's kinetic sculpture as consisting of a plain steel rod emerging from a small black wooden base. When activated by the press of a button, springs to life through the rapid oscillations caused by the electric motor in the base. It forms an illusion of a sinuous, twisting, three-dimensional shape. The image generated through these movements, with its quivering transparency, is that of a standing wave, the term taken from the field of physics familiar to Gabo through his studies in natural science and engineering. One of the most eloquent and articulate spokesman of the kinetic arts movement is George Rickey. Rickey understood the subtlety of wind and was the best at dealing with gravity. He was classically trained and learned to weld from David Smith and managed to suggest bending grass in the breeze. By avoiding the bright colors of Calder, Rickey provided an alternative to kinetic works that was solemn with straight edges and silver tones. At age 44, Kenneth Martin began a body of air-turned mobiles that strived for pure kinetic abstraction. Rather than mimic natural observations, Martin designed and calculated his works from mathematical formula and built experiments for the sake of experiencing unique, unexpected outcomes once the artworks were set into motion. I can't help but compare this systematic process to that of inputting data that is required for working with digital technologies and the computer-aided design of sculpture today. Another recognized artist, Takis, experimented with kinetic magnetism that ranged from flowing forms in some works to frenzied movements in another. Two interesting things about Takis are that he first managed to call into question modern technologies by saluting the ancient philosophical theories on electromagnetism taught by Thales of Miletus 6 centuries before Christ, and the second being that he was most influential on the renowned kinetic artist Jean Tinguely, having an effect in his efforts to mock and play with technology. Paul Bury was much more subtle. He achieved a seductive elegance and a dreamlike caress through making what seemed stationary actually move. Bury's nudging and teasing sculptures leave us contemplating hidden forces and quite possibly the unseen prime mover in the universe. In contrast to Paul Bury, Len Lai's sculptures were both volatile and furious. For a time, the artworks remain calm after the storm passes, but are quick to return to the tangible motion symbolic of both hurricane and lightning. Out of respect and admiration, Len Lai has been honored with an entire museum in New Zealand and created and permanently exhibits several of his kinetic designs. The architectural response to Len Lai's works is worth highlighting and certainly worth experiencing in and of itself. And of course, Jean Tinguely, constructing his metamatic forms, his junk mobiles. Tinguely mixed melancholy with the hilarious. Wildly unpredictable, bizarrely beautiful, these robots destroyed themselves. These monsters thrash, sputter, smoke, explode, shriek. As a neo-datist, Tinguely found a way to express the possibilities of rubbish and non-art materials. He took the liberty and explored the fundamentals of chance with glorious abandon. With all of the electrical power being run to so many kinetic sculptures, it is no doubt that synthetic light and newer technologies would soon play a role in the abstract and optical kinetic arts. Laszlo Moholy-Nagy has been credited as being for the first electro-powered sculpture to emit light in an attempt to reveal and enhance the human realm. Julio Leparc, a determined member of the Grave art movement, used light to provide the illusion of movement. His distorting spectacles allowed the viewer to become a participant, and a type of game aesthetics was developed. Otto Pina collaborated with Heinz Mach and Gunter Ecker to form the earlier mentioned group Zero, using light to evoke creative, harmonizing energies in the forms of light ballets, light paintings, and with gigantic utopian ideals. His science aesthetics gained him a position at MIT in 1972, and his works share the ability to ripple, sparkle, and tease the eye with the vibrancy similar to that of his artist friend Dale Eldred at the Kansas City Art Institute. And I do recall about 10 years ago, Otto Pina wandering through our studio and wondering what was going on, and it was a spontaneous just visit to Kansas City. As different as the new light technologies fell into the hands of artists, and the idea of emitting light rather than reflecting and shining light on sculptures became something valued in and of itself. The physical light units in the work of Dan Flavin and Carissa were, in essence, their artworks. The technologies grew alongside commercial signage, moving neon, and public transit light boxes in major cities. One need only think to the pre-digital neon flamboyance of Times Square, which set the stage for newer technologies in the digital forms of computers and artificial technology. Artists were busy collaborating in groups like EAT, Experiments in Art and Technology, in the 60s with government funding, and the works of Nicholas Schoeffer soon attempted to make the leap to multi-sensory art using text and sounds, while the conceptualism of the 1970s was developing in both America and Europe. At a time when everyone was asking, what is next, we enter half a century of exploded information and technology. And, ... in the wake of these new materials and processes available to the artists today, I am happy to step aside and let my friend Bill Zahner reflect upon the engineering and science technologies that are now in existence and worth thinking about as we move forward with so many digital programs and computer numerically controlled devices. As I reflect upon the disastrous robots that destroyed themselves in the works of Jean Tinguely, I feel myself both professionally and artistically being surrounded by the increasing need to analyze data, interface with computers, and rapid prototype. I believe the kinetic arts community has always been eager to hold the reins of the future technology in art. But I am reminded that Alexander Calder's moving circus may have first been inspired by a 4-horse chariot race. Needless to say, I am interested in what is to come.